he wishes anyone that opposes to him to just go away. He said a similar thing about Kemi Badenoch, didn't he? He just wants us to go on. So the whole world is just in line with his line of thinking. That's fascism, essentially. So David Tennant is a fascist.
Straight to the countdown. At number 50, a new entry, the lovey idiot David Tennant. Former Doctor Who star as part of the kind and tolerant left, he says. So kind and so tolerant that he's attacked JK Rowling for believing in protecting women's rights and said he wished that Kemi Badenoch, quote, doesn't exist anymore, imploring her to, quote, shut up. But during a torturous and tragically unfunny BAFTA opening act, which has seen him, hallelujah, act as host, we all just wish David Tennant would shut up and act. Father Calvin Robinson, isn't he the worst type of lovey? Be kind, be tolerant, support women's rights. Oh, by the way, unless there's a woman who actually believes in biological reality, she happens to be black, she happens to tick every diversity box, but because she talks against trans madness, Kemi Badenoch should just be disappeared off the face of the earth, according to the scumbag.
Yeah, David Tennant's one of the worst lovies because I think he actually believes what he's saying. He's not one of the ones that's just parroting lines in order to fit in with the rest of the lovies. He goes above and beyond. I remember there was a situation with NHS nurses who were complaining about trans people using their changing rooms. So essentially men using female nurses' changing rooms. And they have a right to complain about that. They should feel insecure and vulnerable in those situations. It's not right, it's not normal, it's not healthy. But he doubled down in saying, and I quote, "It's a tiny bunch of little whinging F word who are on the wrong side of history and they'll soon go away." Like, he wishes anyone that opposes to him to just go away. He said a similar thing about Kemi Badenoch, didn't he? He just wants us to go on. So the whole world is just in line with his line of thinking. That's fascism, essentially. So David Tennant is a fascist.
It's become quite a peculiar thing, hasn't it, Calvin? And in some ways, don't you think it has led to the end of the worship of Hollywood and also the entertainment industry? And I'm sure from your point of view, Calvin, that's probably not a bad thing, because very often it is that industry that tries to pump these really damaging messages into society. For example, the trans ideology. And I think there has been a big wake up moment. And sure, every now and then, Calvin, we still want to go and see a blockbuster, for example, Wicked, because they didn't completely bastardize and ruin that film. But if we're talking about Snow White and extreme wokery from Disney, no. So actually, in some ways, folk like Tennant, I think, are making people wake up and maybe stop idolizing the entertainment industry in a way that happened when I was covering it.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of research around this, that people who idolize celebrities have a lower IQ. And so it's good to move away from that mindset, actually, and get back towards normality, because the celebrities live in a bubble and they're not something to be idolizing at all. We shouldn't idolize anyone, of course. The Christian message is that there's only one true savior, one perfect man, and that's Jesus Christ. And so we should look to him for inspiration. The moment you put someone else on a pedestal, it's just a countdown until that person's going to fall off, because no one's perfect. And of course, people will always disappoint us or upset us or say something we don't like. And so why do we do that in the first place? It's not helpful. It's not really healthy. And especially at a time where the liberal lefty lobbies are kind of besmirching our entire civilization and society and talking down anyone that's normal, working class, Christian, conservative, as if these are bad things. So yes, we should ignore them, not put them on pedestals, and just embrace their art. If their art is good, it should speak for itself. You're right, Wicked was actually it was okay. It wasn't as woke as it could be. The actors are awful. And I forget the black woman's name, but she's been peddling a lot of stuff
Cynthia
recently.
Erivo.
Yeah,
but see, what was interesting to me about that, Father Coven, is I saw the movie before I saw any of that press tour, and I was actually really delighted that I did, because I was prepared to be absolutely scathing of the movie. If they had destroyed this movie and they had turned it woke, there were a couple of tiny things, but they really were tiny things. And so I was able to switch off from the press tour. What's so funny, though, is I think there is going to be an argument in the years to come that actually the Hollywood studios won't want to put their actors out at all, because actually Rachel Zegler, who played Snow White, what has destroyed the commercial purposes of that film is the things that she has said on her social media. So, for example, she said that she never wanted a Donald Trump voter to find peace. I mean, that is a vile, horrendous thing to say. And I think it's the same thing with David Tennant when he was performing at the BAFTA Awards this year. It's like, I don't want to hear anything from you. Nothing you say is funny, because actually you are so clearly a nasty, twisted, horrible human being who doesn't give a damn about the mutilation of young girls. And I can't get over that. I just cannot get over it.
Well, especially David Tennant being Scottish, and Scotland has the worst of this. They were pushing the trans stuff far worse than England has been. And so he should be standing up against it. He should be speaking for young girls up and down his country. Instead, he's doing the government's job. When these lobbyies are on the side of the government that they think they're against, there's something wrong there. It's abysmal that there are boys entering girls' spaces, women being abused in their own personal spaces, whether it's sports, whether it's changing rooms, and even in prisons, they're being exploited. It's disgusting. And the Scottish government's been fully pushing it, and David Tennant has been supporting them all along.
Oh, indeed. A sturgeon lovey. And I guess the whole reason, Father Calvin, that actors have succeeded in the past is because just stick to your script. Okay, that's when you're successful. Read your lines off the script and keep your nasty, vile opinions. Trying to shut up a political leader because you disagree with her views on the trans issue. Keep that to yourself if you want to have any further career. Okay, let's move on. Number 49, Steve Bray, a new entry for Westminster's Village Idiot. And let me tell you, there is no bigger loser in Britain in need of getting a haircut and getting a real job. For years, the Lib Dem Ramona has taunted politicians and media figures in his embarrassing EU flag hat, blasting his loudspeaker like a spoiled antisocial teenager on a train. In fact, there is much sympathy for Lee Anderson, who is determined to shut down this stain on British society. And I have to say, Father Calvin, spending his life outside on the streets, has certainly weathered Mr. Bray, only 55 years old, and I don't think I'm being unkind by saying he looks decades older than that. And sometimes, you get the face you deserve.
The face you deserve. Steve Bray's not a nice guy. Obviously, he's in the heart of Westminster, so whenever you're walking around there, you're going to see him. Whenever I walk past him, he's always got something nasty to say, and I just laugh it off and continue walking. But it's unpleasant. There's no need for it. Yes, we have different politics. I voted to leave. You voted to remain. So what? Get over it. There used to be a time when people were allowed to have different politics from each other and still be nice people to each other. He epitomizes that Ramona mentality. If I didn't get my own way, therefore I'm going to be petulant for the rest of my life. Unless he comes to deal with the consequences of the one of the biggest electoral mandates we've had in our country, he's going to be unhappy for the rest of his life. It's quite sad, actually, and the way he's blasting out his music and got the megaphone to blast out his abuse constantly at anyone that walks past him. It's just, was he never disciplined as a child?
I know, and you have Green Party politicians standing alongside him. The problem with Lee Anderson, I totally agree, by the way, with what Lee Anderson is doing. And I remember we discussed it at the time, Father Calvin, but he almost gives Steve Bray what Steve Bray wants. Although I'm not really in the camp, by the way, of just ignoring people and hope they go away, because they don't.
They don't go away. And you're right, he does. Lee Anderson plays into it, and every time you give someone like Steve Bray attention, he loves it, he thrives off it. But where do you draw that line? Because you can't constantly ignore people abusing you. You have to react at some point. I think the right to protest is important in our democracy, but do you need a megaphone, and do you need that in people's faces while you protest? Probably not. Steve Bray has a big enough gob. He can stand there on the street without the microphone and the big loudspeaker. So perhaps someone could just take his speaker away from him and just leave him to it.
But first, the reason you're watching this show is that it's becoming increasingly difficult to trust the mainstream media or so-called fact checkers who claim to determine which facts are true. And there's good reason for that, given the debate over free speech, the controversy surrounding Brexit, and how Trump and other politicians challenging the status quo are portrayed. But I have the solution. It's called Ground News, and it's the best way to stay informed and cut through media bias and narratives so you can get the facts for yourself. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. But I want to show you this incredible website and app. Actually, it's a brilliant app. I've got it on my phone in action. So let's look at that speech earlier in the year from the US Vice President JD Vance, the Munich Security Conference. He tore into the European government. He tore into the UK. This is before the Oval Office meeting, but all about the despicable retraction of free speech. So what Ground News does is immediately collate the 361 sources covering the story into one place, and then its biased distribution service shows how the story is being covered by the media, but broken down by whether the outlets lean to the left or the right. You can then see every article about the topic broken down by the political position and ownership of the publication. So not surprisingly, Newsmax, GB News gave fair and accurate coverage in this case. The HuffPost and The Independent did not. What's more is that Ground News gets to know you personally, providing you with news stories you're interested in while also analysing your own biases. So my favourite feature is the blind spot feed. What it does is surface upwards of 20 stories every day that you might not be hearing about because of the corruption of the mainstream media. Look, I know the reason you're watching Outspoken is because you love the news, you're interested in the news, you know how important the news is, but you don't trust the legacy media to deliver it for you. So what Ground News does is give you the tools to understand the truth about what is going on. I can say it's the only way I read the news now because it allows me to see through media bias and manipulative narratives. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. You can subscribe through my link for 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use for unlimited access. Couple of quick notes too. Ground News, subscriber funded, and supporting my sponsors also supports my work. So for less than a Netflix subscription, you can get all the world's news in one place and think for yourself. It really is a game changer if you're a news junkie like me, which I reckon you are. So that's ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show. Number 48. Roger Hallam, and this is one heck of a drop, down 34 positions from his place at number 14 on last year's countdown. Why? Well, the Extinction Rebellion founder now languishes behind bars because hapless authorities finally decided that XR's breed of civil disobedience and, in my opinion, eco-terrorism was indeed against the law. So while he had his 5-year prison sentence for disrupting M25 traffic reduced to 4 on appeal, when he is finally released, he'll be entering a new era of activism, with Just Stop Oil announcing an end to law breaking while spreading their doomsday message of hysteria. And it's interesting, isn't it, Father Calvin, because last year Hallam was at number 14 on the list, and I was imploring the authorities to actually treat this criminal behavior with the seriousness it deserved, because this wasn't protest. This wasn't about free speech, which you know I'm absolutely committed to.
Oh, yeah.
This was actually about killing people. I mean, that stunt on the M25 could have killed hundreds of people. We know that ambulances were unable to get to hospital. So he's still on the list, but he's behind bars, and actually, I believe, deserves to be.
Roger Hallam is a very, very dangerous man, probably the most dangerous man on this list, actually. I don't know who funds him or where he gets his money, but Roger Hallam is the founder of Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, Animal Rebellion, Insulate Britain, and also the leader of the political party Burning Pink. This is a man who manipulates vulnerable young activists who want to make a difference in their world. He gets them on board in the same way cult leaders do. You know, we've played videos on your show a long time ago of him telling people, you know, the rights are going to come in and they're going to rape your parents. They're going to shove things up there. It's like, wait, what? The graphic language that he uses against people who are not in line with the climate agenda is actually very, very scary. He is a dangerous, toxic individual who should be in prison, absolutely, because he puts people at risk. He encourages them to be extremists. He's never extremist himself. He encourages these young people to be extremists, the ones who put themselves on top of the motorways and such, and it has them recording themselves crying, because he tells them that the world is dying. Their family are going to be raped and murdered unless they do what he says.
I know. And it is concerning. It is concerning because, unfortunately, what he's doing is brainwashing people. There are threats to this country, Father Calvin. Believe me, we speak about them on a daily basis. But the threat does not come from the climate changing. Trust me. At number 47, a massive, huge slump as well for Humza Yousaf, who is down 29 places from his position last year at number 18 on the list. And the incompetent former First Minister of Scotland deserves that steep drop in influence for being the most useless Scottish politician of his generation, a failure in the health, justice and transport portfolios. And after just 13 months as scheming Sturgeon's successor, he quit to take a full-time career in race baiting and spreading disharmony about the awful white people, who happen to make up 95% of Scotland. Good riddance, I say.
That video will go down in political history, absolutely. Can you imagine if I went to India and said, Indian, you're all Indian. This is not okay. You should be mixed race like me. It's like, it would be seen as quite rude and definitely, certainly racist. And he is. Humza Yousaf is racist. It was good to see him resign in shame, pretty much. I would love to see the devolved parliaments rather be dissolved. I don't think there needs to be an assembly in Wales and a parliament in Scotland. I think they've caused more harm than good. And Humza Yousaf is a prime example of that, as well as scheming Sturgeon.
The thing is, Father Calvin, though, is that quite predictably, he's on a grift now. And he's jumped on the racial disharmony grift train, teaming up with the likes of Mehdi Hassan and Owen Jones. And actually, at the same time as he claims to be spreading tolerance, what I believe he is doing is now purposefully spreading racial disharmony. And Calvin, can he not see the irony? This is a guy who got to become First Minister despite having no talent. And by the way, the Labour opposition leader in Scotland, Anna Sawar, is also non-white. So I find his argument utterly pathetic and intellectually dishonest.
It is dishonest. It's funny, isn't it? You can look at all the major cities around the UK where they have Mohammedan leaders, whether it's metropolitan mayors or whatever. It's kind of like, if this country is racist, if the UK is racist and too white, why are there so many minority people in positions of leadership, including the Mayor of London, probably the third most powerful person in the country? Why is that? How can these people be so successful in such a racist country? Well, the answer, of course, is because the UK isn't racist. In fact, if it is racist, it's a racist against its own people. It's racist against the white native Briton, unfortunately. If you're white, heterosexual and Christian and conservative in the UK, you're going to have a hard time. But if you're brown, Mohammedan and liberal, the world is your oyster. It really is. And this is why these people with actually no talent, no skills, and pretty much no knowledge can get so far, because they play the race card. They use diversity, inclusion, and equity against the system in favor of themselves. And they get a leg up, they get a promotion, they get a boost. And it's unfair. Actually, they have privilege. It's brown privilege.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.